Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Tips and Tricks. Today we're taking a look at my new plugin Outgrowth, and we're going to see how it can have some really fun interactions with sequencers. To do that, we're going to use my other plugin Waymaker, which is a MIDI sequencer plugin. So today I want to talk about how we can use Outgrowth's sampling assignments in really fun ways with different sequences. So today we're just going to start with a really basic melody. I'll play it now. So it's pretty basic, kind of, I don't know, almost like a trap melody or something. But I really want to kind of highlight different notes in this melody. So right now we're just hearing a piano sample, but what I've done is I've actually loaded two samples in here. One is this piano sample from Blank Forms, and one is this kind of synth sample from Peter Bark. So right now I have the volume turned all the way down, so we're not hearing it yet. But I just want to show you how I've set this up. You can see that this melody kind of has, it starts on the root note, and then it kind of goes down to this lower fifth later in the melody. And otherwise, everything is kind of hovering above the root note. So let's watch that on the keyboard here. So you can see that I have this really limited range for the second sample, and it only is going to play when we hit those lower notes. And then what I'm going to do is I have stacking enabled. I'm going to turn up the volume here, and we're going to start to hear the second sample kind of highlighting these lower notes in the melody. So we're kind of getting this this interaction and almost something that sounds like we have two different sounds or two different synths running at the same time, but instead we're doing it all with one. I think it's really fun to kind of like dial in exactly where you want the range of something to be heard. We could also kind of like move this around and kind of experiment with what range we want to hear that second sample in. I think this is really fun because you can start to play around with layering different sounds. In this case, we're using a piano, and then we're using this kind of synth or kind of electric piano type sound on top of it to just really like accent some notes in particular. Okay, and next we're going to take a look at round robin and how that can give us some fun options as well. So here I've set up a very similar melody. It's just playing 8/8 notes. But you can see in Outgrowth, I have loaded 3 different samples this time, all from Peter Bark as well. And I've set them all up to span the entire keyboard, and I've put Outgrowth in round robin mode. So what's going to happen is as we play through this melody, we're going to cycle through these samples one at a time. But what's going to be interesting is that our melody repeats every 8 notes, but we're going to be cycling through 3 different samples. So we're going to get this kind of like phasing, like polymeter type feel going on. Let me just play. And that probably isn't the best combination of samples, but I really wanted to illustrate how, you could have really different sounds in there, especially from the same like sample pack. That's really fun. And all of our controls, such as subvert, submerge, all of these are going to kind of apply to all of the samples in parallel. So that's really nice for just kind of making things, a little bit smoother and more consistent across all of your sample choices. And furthermore, strike is nice for that as well, because that's going to create this effect where all of our higher notes are pluckier and all of our lower notes ring out a little more. So with a lot of these controls, we can start to dial in just like a little bit of consistency and homogeneity across all of our samples, while still kind of celebrating the different sounds that they're offering. And also in the samples menu, I've kind of just adjusted their volume a little bit to taste. It seemed like some of them were a little louder and some of them kind of stuck out a little bit more. So just kind of, you can also get your hands on it and really make sure that things are sounding the way that you want them to sound. But I think that's a fun concept, like kind of this idea of rotating through different sounds and, just kind of having that either in contrast or kind of in coordination with the melody. So I would give that a try if you haven't already. Okay, and finally, I want to show you a similar effect using round robin sample assignment, but also now we're going to look at it with chords. So we're actually getting a sneak peek at a new Waymaker feature here, which is that there are going to be just some fun new additions to the chord module, but we're not going to use them right now. We're just going to use it as a chord generator. So similar to before, I have loaded 3 different samples here. They're all from Blankform's Blur 2 pack, and I've turned up the subvert so they feel a little bit smoother and kind of fit together more, like I said before. And what we're going to do is we're going to generate chords with Waymaker. And what's going to happen is that because we're round robining, we are going to kind of have a different sample for each voice in the chord. Let's hear how it sounds. So let's kind of isolate each of these chords one by one. I'm going to just mute all but one of them. So that's one voice. Let's do the same for the second one. And then the last one. So they're all really different, but because we're playing all together, they kind of blend into this one chord. And I think this is a cool effect. We could just put this in stacking mode and then we'd kind of hear every sample for every voice in the chord. But I think it's also fun to play around with this idea where we are just assigning a totally different sound for every voice in the chord. Maybe just a contrast. Let's hear that stacking. So it's super rich if we stack them all together. But I think it's fun just to use this round robin effect. And another reason why that's fun is because we can go back to the principle that we explored in the melodic example where we kind of had this phasing relationship. So right now, because we have a chord with 3 notes and we have 3 samples, the same sample is playing the same note in the chord each time. But if we were to add some more voices, if we were to have 4 voices in our chord, then we would hear one of these samples twice, and then we would start rotating around as we hear a different sample twice in each successive chord. Let me just play that and show you. So we're kind of hearing a different um, kind of timbre shine through for each of these different chords. Um, we kind of get more of this sample in one, and then we get more of this sample in the next one. And I think that's a really cool effect. It's kind of like we're not modulating anything, we're not affecting the timbre of the sound really. All we're doing is we're cycling through samples in a way that I think is really fun to explore. We could also do things like, using the principles we looked at before, we could restrict the range of certain samples. Let's say we only want to hear this one in the upper range, we only hear this one in the lower range. We can just start to build up these systems in a way that I think is really unique to Outgrowth. So, if you haven't tried any of these tricks already, I would give them a try. I think it's one of the more fun things in Outgrowth to kind of think about sample assignment and how you can get really creative with it, how it can kind of enable this built-in sound design just by rotating through samples. So I would give that a try if you haven't already. I think Outgrowth also pairs really well with Waymaker. Obviously, I'm biased, but I would give that a try if you haven't already yet. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.